This is BJ Hathaway of Augusta Golf Instruction, and this will be a swing analysis for Rory McIlroy. And unlike some of the other swing analysis that you may have seen, this will not be about what Rory does incorrectly or how we could make him better. This will be geared towards the average golfer. There are a lot of people who like to try to swing like a certain player, which obviously this is a great golf swing. So if you're in that frame of mind where you'd like to try to swing like Rory, this will give you some things to look at. But also for the average golfer, if you like his swing, then this will give you some things to look for in your setup and swing that will help you to be a better player. So that's what this is geared towards. And by the way, if you want to swing like Rory, you should be really flexible and very athletic. And so I would encourage you to visit a TPI certified pro like myself. If you want to try to copy a swing and you know that that person's athletic and flexible, you need to have a physical assessment done to give you an idea if you can move that way. So a lot of golfers who we try to emulate, our body will not move into those positions very well, so we have a lot of trouble trying to make those swings work. But let's go ahead and start with Rory. We see just got a plain line drawn in here, and I'll put one line across the back of his hips, and so we'll get him started. We'll see a nice posture here, good bend angle, and I like the way his arms, basically you'll see his hands hang in this area through here, which is just outside his toes. So that's a good posture to emulate. And also like how the shaft runs through the belt line. You'll see that's pretty standard with a lot of tour players. So those are some things you can look for in your own setup. You'll see feet, knees, hips, shoulders, and eyes are basically square to the target line. And as we get him started here, you'll see he's kind of a one-piece takeaway. Club moves very much on plane through this section with not a lot of independent movement of the body, and not much manipulation of the club face through here. And when he gets the club about parallel to the ground here, we'll see that the club face is not toe up. It's slightly angled down towards the ground. And as he continues past parallel, he'll start to add just a little wrist set here. And so the club face is still not really changing angle yet. So he's basically just moved the club a little bit further up. And then he'll allow the right elbow to start folding just now. And you'll see how that right forearm is still in line with the shaft. And so immediately he starts getting that shaft basically parallel to the plane. And he's just about done with the rotation of the face. It was very subtle. So if we stop him at this location, we'll see his hands are basically in the middle of his chest, so not a lot of independent movement of the arms away from the body. And the club shaft is pretty much going to point almost perfectly at the golf ball. Okay, so that's a good position you can get in the mirror and try to see, does your swing get pretty close to these positions? Are you still in posture? And do you have the club shaft pointing down at the plane like that? So you see he's going to keep that club basically on the same angle. He's not going to do anything funny up and down with the shaft angle, rotating it up or flat behind him. He's going to keep it right here. So we're going to leave that line in and continue him up. So you see his hands are basically going to travel up that path And it looks from this perspective like he's not turning anymore, but we'll see the face-on view as well, and you'll see he does continue turning the shoulders. And if we could see through his hands, we would see that the leading edge of the face is basically parallel to the shaft plane at the top. So he's about done here. I like this position with the left arm parallel to the shaft plane. You'll see his shoulders do not turn exactly parallel to the plane, but they're a little bit flatter. But I like that spot as well. So again, this is another position, if you're that flexible, you would see lead arm parallel to the shaft plane. And let's back out some of these lines temporarily. You see he's still in posture, and the right forearm is basically supporting that shaft, and you got this nice triangle here at the top. So he's really supporting the club at the top. So now let's back down to where we were for just a second. So in between the yellow line and the red is where he needs to come down in the downswing to get in that slot that you've heard about. So he's going to start unwinding pretty much immediately from this perspective. You'll see a little squat and then quite a bit of turning action with the hips. And then the torso is going to engage as well. And you'll see that club is going to get back on that red plane line. And then as he gets in about the same position that his left arm was, the club is actually lower. And pointing almost exactly at the ball again. And you'll see the hands are basically in the middle of his chest again, so his hands are not too deep behind him. Now this would be a somewhat challenging position to get into for you on the downswing to practice, but you could. You would have to have a lot of turn in the lower body with not much in the upper body. But what we're looking for is, what is that shaft doing? And you'll see it's basically riding parallel in between those lines. Hips are still moving, still turning. And so here's another interesting point. Impact is not the same as address. You'll see the right arm is substantially bent, and that right forearm is basically in the same plane as the shaft, or very, very near it. And you also notice that the club shaft, the grip is stood up a little. The bottom of the shaft is basically on the plane, but the grip end is stood up, and that's due to some centrifugal force pulling upwards on the grip end of the club, and plus the gravity in the club head, the weight in the club head, and all that speed going on. That's not an error. It's just the way things happen in golf swings. So if we check these positions here, we'll see that they're still basically all very near to parallel to each other. You'll see not an over rotation of the club face. Hit that ball square. And then as he gets over here, still in posture. And now that club will replane itself and then also pretty much come close to replaning itself on this exit. So that's the down the line view of his swing. Let's load up the face on view. we'll see pretty standard setup, not a lot of foot flare. Right foot is basically square, left foot may be slightly flared out. And he does not use, from this perspective, a somewhat considered normal hand position. They are slightly forward, about the inseam of his left pants leg there. And the shaft is angled just a little bit forward. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And we'll go ahead and mark his right hip position. Now we can tell what he's doing with his pivot. And so we'll see from this perspective, he's going to basically maintain the triangle for the initial section of his takeaway. And so basically that right arm is starting to fold just a little here. And as he coils around his spine, you'll see basically some a traditional style pivot where he's not staying stacked over his left foot. And again, we talked about his flexibility. I think this is a 7-iron, so he's not going to quite get it to parallel. Very close. But a lot of flexibility in that lead arm and shoulder. Now, as far as hip turn, tried to measure that as best we could. It's about 35 degrees of hip turn, so not a great deal of turn, but you can see quite a bit of turn in the shoulders. So if you're this flexible and you like this golf swing, this is a top position that you can look at and try to see if your body will allow you to get in that position. You'll see his hips have stayed stable. There's no significant sway off the golf ball with his hips or his head. His head is very much in the center of his body at the top. He's going to transition with a hip slide right here. So it's a very subtle movement. There is a little bit of hip turn as well, but it's basically moving the body back onto the left hip and left foot. And then his body starts to unwind. And we're going to see him get in a great spot here. All the lag that he had at the top, he's basically leaving his arms and club alone, not trying to do anything with the club head. So he's dragging that grip into the club down and through with his pivot. And we'll see impact is here. So again, if we load up face on view one more time, we'll see address and impact are not the same. Hand position is about the same. Right forearm is in a different spot, pointing in front of the golf ball more. Right elbow is quite a bit bent. Weight is much more on the left side. Hips have turned quite a bit through. Head position is about the same. He's looking slightly angled here with his vision. But again, address and impact are not the same at all. And a great finish on the left side with all the body weight around. So you've heard discussions about Rory's hip speed. That's definitely one of the reasons he can hit it far, but you'll see it's not all turn from the top. There is some lateral motion to get that club started down for him before he really starts unwinding. His hip speed is about 720 degrees per second of rotation compared to the average golfer about 300. So that extra hip speed translates into his kinetic sequence, where he can generate speed from the lower body, and as the club moves down and his hips start to slow down, that energy transfers up into the arms and shoulders, and then finally out through the arms and into the club. But we'll see it's not hip speed alone, it's some slide then turn, and his ability to move his hips that fast is probably a lot of natural talent, plus a lot of it flexibility and strength in his glutes and core. So this would be a good thing for all golfers to work on, no matter how flexible you are, is to always try to get yourself in a very good balanced position on the left side when you finish your golf swing. You'll see the entire bottom of that right shoe will be visible from down the line, and there's no wobble in his finish position with his body. And so just a great golf swing, and some good key points that we can look at for the average golfer. And by average doesn't mean that you're not any good, it just means you're not a tour pro. And so, like I said, if you want to try to copy this swing, first of all, you better be flexible, and you better be pretty athletic and strong. And then we can choose to try to emulate a certain player. Obviously this is a great golf swing, good young player with a good head on his shoulders and a ton of potential. And so there's just some key things we can look at. And one more thing we'll look at here. So on the left, let's see if we can move him over some. We'll see the shaft is parallel to the ground. And this key point in the downswing, shaft is parallel to the ground. So notice the position of the hands in relation to the body. You'll see on the downswing the hands are in front of the right leg. In the backswing the hands are well outside the body lines. And so we'll look at this and say, what do I need to be doing with my right elbow in the downswing? And are there any differences in what the right shoulder is doing at impact versus address? So here's another key point that we can look at and see that address and impact are not the same. So right shoulder is lower, right elbow is bent. And so anyone who tells you that address and impact are the same, they may mean well, but they're not really sure what they're talking about, okay? So basically some things we can look at in this young golf swing. And let me throw up this address here. So if you enjoyed this, we hope you did. We'd love you to visit our fan page, facebook.com/AugustaGolf. We do quite a bit of helpful information for golfers. I'd love to have you join us and be involved in our discussions and kind of take a look at some things that we do. But this is a look at Rory, and hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to seeing your comments. Thanks.